The responsibility of the church is to live an alternative lifestyle that is different, a Christ-centered lifestyle that is different than the communities and the ideologies around them, right? We're supposed to be a community within a community, a nation within a nation, right? We should be creating self-sustaining communities that are not entangled or ensnared by worldly systems. And we saw one of those entanglements when COVID came out, when people in the church when the government is trying to force you to take the vaccine and they're like, take the vaccine or we'll fire you. Take the vaccine or you won't be able to work here. Take the vaccine or you will not be able to come to this school, things of that nature. Or when the world wants to give you all these benefits that the government wants to give you and society wants to give you. But then the moment you start talking about Jesus and the moment you start putting a distinction between proper marriage between heterosexuals versus improper marriage between the LGBT community, right? All of a sudden, they want to start taking back those benefits, right? Or they want to start canceling you on YouTube and canceling you on various social media platforms, right? And so we need to be creating communities that foster righteousness, but also communities that are self-sustaining so that we don't be putting ourselves between a rock and a hard place. We meet in our homes so that we can better fulfill this mission. We're not saying that this mission cannot be fulfilled in, storefronts and in schools and in 2,000-seat auditoriums and stuff like that. We're not saying that it can't be done. I would argue that it's more difficult, all right? Somehow the church has lost focus. They started focusing on the church building instead of the actual church. God bless you. My name is Samuel Genus with Jesus Church here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And today I'm going to be answering the question, why do I have church gatherings in my home? Why do I have church gatherings in my home? But before we get into it, do me a favor, subscribe, share this video. Also, do me a favor, go to our website, www.jesuschurchworldwide.com, fill out our form there so that we can connect, all right? So why do I have church gatherings in my home? There's people who typically meet in storefronts, they meet in nice buildings, and they meet in schools. They meet in, amazing, cathedrals. But Sam, why are you having church gatherings in your home? And I'm going to answer those questions with a few points, and hopefully this will be brief. I don't want to be too long. So I want to start by first saying that the church is not a building. The church is not a building. The church is a people who have decided to trust in Christ and to follow the teachings of Christ in every area of their life, right? The church has always gathered or congregated in some location. Either that location was indoors in a building or outdoors, all right? So we need to understand that the church is just not a building. The church is a people, right? And they may meet in a storefront. They may meet in a nice cathedral. They may meet in a school. They may meet in the backyard, front yard, at a park, at the foot of a mountain, by the beach. They may meet in an Airbnb, right? Or they may meet in a home, just like we are doing. All right. So it's important, ladies and gentlemen, that we understand that words have meanings. And not only do words have meanings, but we need to understand the meaning of those words. We need to understand the proper context of those words, church being one of them. We need to use those words in proper context. And we must be prepared to correct others who use the words out of context. This will help prevent the spread of ignorance and prevent false teachings and practices, all right? So the word church in the Bible always refer to people. We need to understand that. At the word church in the Bible, it always referred to people. And when we look at many scriptures in the Bible, and we look at the context in which the way the word church is used, and we look at what the topic is referring to, here are some things we recognize concerning the responsibility of the church. We know that elders are responsible for feeding the church the word of God. We know that we should be praying for the church. We know that we should care for the widows and the fatherless in the church. We should care for the elders and the apostles in the church. We should care for the needs of responsible poor people in the church. These are the responsibilities of the church that we learn as we just read through the New Testament. We learn that we should care for the needs of other churches, right? We're not an island. It's not just, we're just focused on our needs, but we recognize that there is a universal church. There is churches, there may be multiple church locations within the city, and we need to know them. We need to be concerned about them. And when possible, we should help them. All right. Let's keep going. The church should be teaching men how to lead their home. The church should be teaching men how to care for their wife and children. The church should be teaching men how to care for their aging parents, their aging aunts, and their aging uncles, right? We know that as people get older, they can't move like they used to. They can't work like they used to. They can't, protect themselves like they used to. And they have needs. And the church should be teaching men how to care for those needs. We're not just supposed to just sit in some service and just praise God and fall on our knees and worship and sing songs. We have a responsibility. Finally, the church should be teaching men how to care for the responsible poor people within their own families, right? We're not just teaching men how to take care of their wife and their kids. We teach men how to care for their family, right? This is very key. A lot of people skip that when they're reading the scriptures, or they don't recognize it, right? The church should be teaching women. The older women should be teaching the younger women how to be chaste, how to keep their home, how to love their husband, how to love their children, right? Aged women, older women should be teachers of good things. They should be teaching life skills and home economic skills and how do you work with your husband and how do y'all work together to accomplish the vision of your family. These are the things that the church is supposed to be doing, all right? The church should be sharing the gospel, right, to their community. The church should also be planting new churches. Why? Because the church should be growing, right? The church should be fruitful and multiply. So elders should be raised within the congregation. Evangelists should be raised within the congregation. Deacons should be raised within the congregation, and they should be doing the will of the Lord. And if they're doing the will of the Lord, guess what should happen? Multiplication should happen. Growth should happen, right? People from other locations will start coming to the assembly, to the congregation, but there's no need for people to travel 75, 100 miles just to come to a gathering. Then it means, no, we need to open up another gathering 50 miles from here or 70 miles from here, right? We need to understand that, all right? And so these are the responsibilities of the church, right? We're not just to meet in a building and just, make that building so beautiful and then only use it once a week, and then pour all of our money into that building and don't have resources left to do any of the stuff we've really been called to do, right? Now, I'm not knocking buildings and stuff like that, but we need to be good stewards over the resources and the time and the strength and abilities and the networks that God has given to us. So we need to understand the responsibilities of the church. And when you understand the responsibility of the church and you understand that these responsibilities, they're not just meeting centric, right? They're not just centered around a meeting, right? It's centered around Christ. It's centered around a mission. It's centered around a responsibility. And so the church got work to do. All right. The responsibility of the church is to live an alternative lifestyle that is different, a Christ-centered lifestyle that is different than the communities and the ideologies around them, right? We're supposed to be a community within a community, a nation within a nation, right? We should be creating self-sustaining communities that are not entangled or ensnared by worldly systems, right? We should not, we got to be very mindful. There's a lot to unpack in that, and I can't go into all the details in that because it's a lot to cover. But just to keep it short, I'll repeat it again. We should be creating self-sustaining communities that are not entangled or ensnared by worldly systems. And we saw one of those entanglements when COVID came out, when people in the church when the government is trying to force you to take the vaccine, and they're like, take the vaccine or we'll fire you. Take the vaccine or you won't be able to work here. Take the vaccine or you will not be able to come to this school. Things of that nature, right? Or when the world wants to give you all these benefits that the government wants to give you and society wants to give you. But then the moment you start talking about Jesus and the moment you start putting a distinction between, proper marriage between heterosexuals versus improper marriage between the LGBT community, right? All of a sudden, they want to start taking back those benefits, right? Or they want to start canceling you on YouTube and canceling you on various social media platforms, right? And so we need to be creating communities that foster righteousness, but also communities that are self-sustaining so that we don't be putting ourselves between a rock and a hard place. All right. Remember, Jesus didn't just come so that we can just have a bunch of church services. He came so that we can live out this truth and live out this righteousness in the here and now, in our communities, in our day-to-day life. All right. So those are the things that the church is responsible for. Right. And the reason why we meet in our home is because we can fulfill the mission of Christ better by meeting in our home, right? We can fulfill the mission of Christ better by meeting in the home. And so what is that? What is the mission of Christ? Living righteous to fulfill the unique call of God upon our life. Each one of us have a unique call of God. We need to be creating Christ-centered communities, right? That's what the local church is. Within that particular zip code or that particular city or that particular geographical location, we should be sharing the gospel, and then we should be discipling others to do the same. And so we meet in our home so that we can better fulfill this mission. We're not saying that this mission cannot be fulfilled in, storefronts and in schools and in, meeting in, big buildings, in 2,000 seat auditoriums and stuff like that. We're not saying that it can't be done. I would argue that it's more difficult. All right. So we believe that we want the reason why we meet in the home is because we can achieve deeper relationships faster, right? What do I mean by that? There's greater opportunities or more opportunities to communicate with each other in less time and with less events. In other words, the gatherings are more effective, right? A lot of times when people go to a church service, a typical church service, they go and they're just sitting, everybody's facing the stage, and you're listening to the person speaking on that stage. And then when it's all over, everybody goes home. You really didn't build relationships with people, right? You really didn't build relationships with people. You probably got a good word, depending on what church you're going to, right? You probably got a good word. You probably heard some good songs. You definitely gave some money, but it's more of a spectator event. Okay, where the professionals do what they do, and then the spectators just come and they just, they focus and pay attention, right? But when you gather in a home, it's much more intimate. It's less people, and so there's more opportunities to communicate because you're right there. You can't avoid them. The lights are on. You're not in some dim building, but the lights are on. You see them when they come in through the door, right? So there's greater opportunities to communicate, right? Because typically in these smaller gatherings, right, you're eating together, right? You're speaking together when before before the event kind of starts, and you're also still communicating while the event's going on, and you're communicating when the event is over. Because it's a smaller group, there's greater opportunities for communication. Each person will be seen. That's another one. Each person will be seen. They cannot hide. Quickly when someone is missing. Okay, I know quickly when someone is missing. Like, hey, what happened to brother so and so? Hey, what happened to sister so and so? Right? Hey, what happened to your child? Are they okay? You know who's missing, right? Because you're aware, right? The building can only handle so many people. In a home, it's not like you got 30, 40, 50 people. It's typically anywhere between 10 to 20 people where you're attempting to build strong relationships. So you can quickly tell, when someone is missing, and you can quickly follow up with those people, right? You become aware of the needs of others faster, right? Because it's a smaller setting. There's testimonies, right? Everybody gets a chance to share their testimony. Everybody gets a chance to share their prayer requests. Everybody gets a chance to share what they're going through and to share their burdens, or even to share their confessions, right? Typically in the average church, you're not doing that on Sunday. Like if I were to ask many of you this past Sunday, who did you testify to at your church? This past Sunday, who did you confess to, or who confessed to you? This past Sunday or Bible study, whatever day, who shared their needs? Who shared their prayer requests with you, right? And so in these smaller gatherings, they just happen at a faster rate. They happen more. Why? Because the environment is conducive. It's conducive for dialogue. It's conducive for questions. It's conducive for people to share their thoughts, right? And yet we have eldership to make sure that there's order, okay? So there's organicness happening, but yet there's order to the process, right? So we're not just willy-nilly in it, right? But at the same time, we're not so rigid, and we're not so cold, and we're not so structured that there's no flexibility and that everybody can be heard, all right? So we become aware of the needs of others faster. And when you become aware of the needs of others faster, guess what happens? The opportunity to tend to those needs happen faster, right? And when you start tending to the needs of one another, man, that does something to your connection. It does something to the relationship. It does something to the bond that you have, right? And what it does, it also quickly fosters other events that are not orchestrated by the elders of the church, right? Before you know it, people are like, hey, I'm going for a walk. You want to come with me? I go for walks in the park on Wednesdays or on Thursdays. Do you want to go with me? Like my wife and Miss Katala, they meet up. They go for walks in the neighborhood. They meet up for coffee or for dinner or for lunch. They meet up to do book readings and stuff like that. So there's many opportunities to fellowship with people without it being this, I should say official church meeting, because you're just now getting to know one another, and those things happen organically where other events start happening, outside of the weekly gathering. All right. So you become aware of the needs of others faster. You become aware of the behavior of others faster. You become aware of the behaviors of others faster. You start picking up on their character. You start picking up whether or not they're selfish or whether or not they're a giver. You pick up on their tones. You pick up on their attitudes, good and bad. You pick up on the way they eat. They're good eating, they're bad eating. You pick up on how they keep their home because you're interacting with them. You go over their house, right? All the meetings don't always have to happen at my house, right? They can happen at other people's houses as well. And so you become aware of the behavior of others much faster, the good and the bad. And because of that, we can move to the next point. There's better accountability. It's hard to hold people accountable when you don't know them. It's hard to hold people accountable when you are not around them. It's hard to hold people accountable when you're not spending time with them. And check this out. It's hard to hold people accountable who don't trust you, right? When they don't trust you, it's hard for you to hold them accountable. And so being able to establish deeper relationships with people, it puts you in a position where you have relational authority. Right, you're not just pulling rank and saying, well, I'm the deacon of the church, or well, I'm the elder of the church, listen to me, or I'm the prophetess in the church, or the prophet in the church, listen to me. No, it's like the accountability is there relationally. When you build relations, right, people begin to see, they begin to notice that, wow, when he or she opens their mouth, like they say good things, like, wow, this person is knowledgeable, wow, this person is knowledgeable in that topic, or this person is knowledgeable in that topic, or I notice a certain good pattern that I see, and those things help build the trust. And when there's more trust, you have better accountability, right? And so deeper relationships allow for deeper trust, which allows deeper accountability, right? And better accountability. And finally, it's a better environment to shepherd, right? I can shepherd you when I know you. I can shepherd you better when I know you, right? I can shepherd you better when I understand you. I can shepherd you better when I understand your needs. I can shepherd you better when I listen to you and hear what's on your heart. Typically, that doesn't happen in many other environments because people tend to be focused on who's coming, how many people are coming. And then the moment you get past a certain amount of people, you're going to be spending less time with them. The moment you get, because you only have so much bandwidth, right? As a pastor, as an elder, as not even just as a pastor or an elder, just as an individual, as a shepherd, the more people that come, the less interaction you're going to have with them because it's just more people. You only have a certain amount of bandwidth. You can only shake so many hands. You can only have so many conversations with people a day. And when you're talking about a deeper relationship, that takes time. And time is not something that is just freely available, right? It's not unlimited. Time is finite. Like time, there's only so much of it, and we have to be able to use it wisely, right? And so from a shepherding perspective, being able to be in an environment and to establish an environment, all right? Because that's really what it is. Just because we're meeting in the home doesn't mean all these things just work just because we're meeting in the home. We're establishing this kind of environment. We're establishing this culture because there are some people who meet in the home and they act just like, people who are meeting in a building with 500 people, but it's a different mindset. It's a different approach. So being in this environment, crafting this kind of environment, it makes shepherding easier. All right. So that's basically how I would answer that question, why we meet in my home. It helps us to fulfill the mission of Christ better, right? It helps us to tend to the needs of others, right? And then secondly, it's affordable. Or lastly, I should say, it's affordable. Right? So many people, I remember reading an article and they was talking about the budget of many churches. And a lot of times the budget of most churches just goes to administrative type stuff. And a very small percentage goes towards benevolence or goes towards helping people. Right? And when we're looking in the scriptures, that's all we see is like, help the church, care for the church, you know? And somehow the church has lost focus and started focusing more on the so-called church building and less on the people. They started focusing on the church building instead of the actual church, right? And then on top of that, many people are looking for an income, right? They're looking for an income, you know, and if I get more and more members, you know, then as a pastor, I can get more offerings and I can raise more money and I can live a certain quality of life because I got all these offerings and tithes coming in, right? And I can get a bigger and better house and a bigger and better car, and I can buy better clothes, and I can go on better vacations, and I can put my children in better schools, you know? And oftentimes that's a self-centered perspective. You should not be going into ministry for that, right? Jesus said it's better to give than to receive. I would argue, and I would even argue, even according to the scriptures, that most pastors, they will like either, most of them will bivocational, you know, in the scriptures, you know, they were bivocational. Now, if you was an apostle, you're so busy traveling, you know, you're not really stationary in one location. So you're not, you're always on a go, you know? And so that's the reason why in the scriptures, we see that the apostles oftentimes were cared for like big time, you know, so that they can travel to get to place to place. They didn't get cared for to the point where you can put them in a mansion, you know, or you can buy them a jet. No, it wasn't anything like that. It was like, hey, here's some money to get you on that boat so that you can go to the other city and share the gospel. Hey, here's some food so that you can eat, so that you don't starve while you're in town. Like, it was that kind of caring, you know? It wasn't like, hey, we're going to put your children through private school. It wasn't none of that. It wasn't like, hey, we're going to buy you a Coach bag, or we're going to get your wife some, you know, some red bottom shoes and stuff like that. It wasn't about that. It was about the furtherance of the gospel. We're going to help you so that you can further the gospel. Okay. That was the whole purpose of it. Not what we see today, right? Many pastors today should have a day job. They should have a 9 to 5. They're not that busy where they should avoid working. And at the end of the day, it's a husband's responsibility to take care of his wife and children. You know, it's not the church's responsibility to take care of your wife and your children. That's your responsibility, right? And so any man who's married should be doing whatever he got to do to take care of his wife and children. That's why I work, because I got things that I need to do for my wife and children, and I don't expect the church to have that burden, right? I want to give my wife nice things. I want to give my children nice things, and I don't expect the church to carry that burden. You know, yes, they can bless me. Yes, they can give me an offering, right? But it's not their responsibility to take care of my house and to take care of my family, all right? So this is very important. Like, you know, doing church work is actually easy, and it's actually not as expensive as we think. The only reason why it's so expensive is because we have like this other agenda that, you know, we have this other agenda that's not necessarily Christ-centered. You know, it's not Christ-centered. You know, it has to do with, you know, fame. It has to do with, you know, gaining resources. It has to do with, you know, trying to establish a certain level of comfort, or trying to copy someone else's ministry, instead of just doing what God called you to do, right? If God called you to preach, brother, just start preaching. Like, you don't need a building to start preaching. Just start preaching wherever he sends you. Start preaching in the street. Start preaching on YouTube. Start preaching on Facebook. You know, start preaching through email. Write some lessons and send them to the people you know. Just get the word out. That's all you got to do. The preacher's job is to get the word out. So get the word out. Anywhere God has called you to do that. God did not call you to preach to benches. God did not call you to preach to walls, and God did not call you to preach to empty rooms. He called you to preach to people. So go where the people are, and then let God make those connections. You know what I mean? But a lot of people out there, and a lot of you pastors out there, you're putting yourself in a lot of stress. You know, your marriage is on the rocks because you're stressed out. You know, you got all these different agendas and all these different goals, and you're stressed out. But I'm just letting you know that it doesn't take all that. Like, those things are not required. A lot of times we're trying to create ministry instead of attempting to address ministry that is important. I always tell people, you don't find ministry. Ministry finds you. It calls on you. It tugs at you. You know, it pulls you. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's just like here. We didn't have a lot of kids. A lot of times it's adults coming here, so there's no need for a children's ministry if you ain't got a bunch of children, right? But then over time, people want to come and they have little children, and they want to be able to focus, you know, on the conversation, the dialogue with the adults, but they want their kids to be able to still be edified, right? And so now there's a need to tend to the little ones, right? But if the need is not there, the need is not there, right? So ministry is not eternal. Ministry fluctuates. Ministry evolves. And so you got to be flexible. So if God called you to preach, preach, right? And if there's no one to preach to, then there's no one to preach to. Then you got to figure out, okay, Lord, where are you going to send me, right? Because, you know, he ain't calling us to preach to trees and to dirt and to the wind. I know a lot of you people out there like to be real spooky and superstitious, and you like to say all that, oh, just preach to the wind. Like, no, he calls us to preach to people, right? And so find where the people are and preach to them, you know, and make yourself available to them. Right? Make the sacrifice to be where they're at, to minister to them. Do what you got to do to get the word out to them. And then when the need arises, right? When the need arises, then you cross that bridge when you get there. I think a lot of times we try to build things where there's no need. You know, it's like preach the gospel, show love, be in people's lives, be a family, be committed to each other, pray for them, meet them in the hospital, meet them when they're sick, you know, help them out when they're going through stuff, you know, teach them, disciple them. And then as the need arises, then you address those things when they come. So I just wanted to share that. This is the reason why we meet in our home. I love it. You know, it's not stressful. Yes, there's a sacrifice because we're opening up our home where, you know, we got stuff in our living room and stuff like that. But this is what we're doing. This is what I'm called to do. Right. This is what I'm called to do. Remember, I was saying earlier that, you know, one of the missions of Christ is for each of us to fulfill our unique calling. Right. And so I know what I'm called to do, and I'm doing that. And you need to know what you're called to do, and you need to do that. You need to get around people who can help you navigate those waters so that you can hear what God is calling you to do. Right. So I wanted to just drop that. I wanted to encourage those of you who may be thinking the same thing or pondering the same thing. If you have any questions, hit me up. You know, send me a DM, send me an email. You know, go to our website and put your question on it. We have a form on our homepage. You can post your question there. You know, if you go to our website and our contact page, you can, my email is there, my phone number is there, so you can call me or you can send me an email. You can, if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook or whatever other social media platform, you can post your question in the comments, and, you know, we can engage and I can do my best to answer your question. All right. So that's pretty much it. Do me a favor, subscribe. Also do me a favor, go to our website and fill out the form so we can connect. For those of you who may be looking for a fellowship where you want to grow and you want to learn and you want a deeper connection with people, you want to give and receive, you want to serve and be served, then come check us out. We'll be more than happy to engage in a relationship with you and try to help you in your faith walk. Also, for those of you who are, you feel like the Lord is tugging on you to do something similar, or you may feel the Lord is tugging on you to, open up a storefront, right? Hey, if you need some help, give me a call. If you need some questions answered, you need someone to help, with teaching, give us a call. Give me a call. Understand, I'm approaching this completely different than many people. We're the church. We're the body of Christ. The church is universal. So there's no big I's and little U's, right? So we're here to play our part, and however I can play my part, I will be interested. So feel free to reach out to me. That's all I got. My name is Samuel Genus. I will see you in the next video. Take care.